She served her community with honor until one shift in 1984 changed everything. A respected police sergeant vanished. No goodbyes, no witnesses, no leads. Why did her patrol route change that night? What did a rookie cop reveal years later that was quickly buried? And what was discovered in a dry canyon 15 years later that no one can explain? Before we begin, take a second and comment the time in your part of the world right now. You might be surprised how many of us are watching at the exact same moment, like we're all connected by this story. Sergeant Emily Rains was a familiar face in a quiet Arizona town. With 12 years on the force, she was known for her calm judgment and fierce dedication. On the evening of October 14, 1984, Emily signed into her night shift at 6 p.m. sharp, as she always did. The weather was dry. Routine calls had come in. She grabbed a coffee from the same corner diner, waved to the same gas station clerk. Everything about that night seemed unremarkable, except one thing. Emily radioed in just after 9:45 p.m., saying she'd be checking out a suspicious vehicle near a quarry road, a place far off her usual patrol. No backup was requested. The dispatcher logged the call, and then nothing. No follow-up, no return transmission, no distress signal. By midnight, she had not returned. And when her unit tried to raise her over the radio, the line remained dead. At 12:27 a.m., another officer drove Emily's last known route. There was no sign of her cruiser, no fresh tire marks near the quarry road, no disturbed gravel. It was as if she had never driven that way at all. The force was shaken. Emily had no known enemies. She was not involved in any controversial investigations. She lived alone, had no recent disputes, and no sign of trouble at her home. Her gun was registered and accounted for, but it was not on her belt when she vanished. And strangest of all, her assigned patrol map had been altered. The printout showed a reroute, one that was never logged through the dispatch system. Only one person had access to that schedule other than Emily, a supervisor who had abruptly transferred weeks later. But when questioned, he claimed he didn't recall any changes. That line would become all too familiar in the years to come. Emily's younger sister, Marlene, was the first to sound the alarm outside of law enforcement when she visited the station the next morning. She found officers visibly shaken but disturbingly quiet. She was told only that Emily was off the grid. Marlene pressed for details. Why wasn't a search party deployed immediately? Why hadn't helicopters or tracking dogs been called in? The answers were vague. The department claimed they were assessing jurisdiction. The truth? Rumors swirled internally about a potential police cover-up. Emily had reportedly flagged inconsistencies in a minor drug bust a week prior, a case involving an off-duty officer's nephew. Had she said too much? Marlene remembered something else. 3 weeks earlier, Emily had mentioned she was being followed home from the station. She brushed it off. Now Marlene could not stop wondering. Was that the warning everyone missed, or was it already too late when she noticed? Emily's patrol car was a 1982 Ford LTD, standard issue for the department. It had a radio tracker installed for emergencies. When activated, it could ping its last known location. But when officers tried to access the system, the ping history was gone, corrupted. Officials blamed it on a system error. That explanation didn't sit right with Marlene or with a few junior officers quietly asking questions of their own. The car was never found. Not in the desert, not in storage, not in water. It had vanished along with her. 15 square miles were searched on foot. Helicopters scanned with infrared, hoping to spot heat signatures in the rocky terrain. But there was no signal, no oil stains, no tire grooves. At some point, the search was scaled back. And when the town budget was reallocated a month later, it was clear the case had gone cold, quietly, deliberately. Nearly a year later, a rookie officer named Darren Hull resigned unexpectedly. He was just 22. In his final week, he met privately with Marlene at a roadside diner, unrecorded and off the books. What he told her would change everything. Darren claimed he saw Emily's cruiser that night. He was patrolling near the service road by the quarry around 10:30 p.m. and caught a glimpse of tail lights turning off into the brush. He radioed in to check if another unit was logged there. Dispatch said no, but Darren never followed the vehicle. He was told to let it go. By who? He hesitated to say. I liked Sergeant Rains, he told Marlene. She didn't deserve what happened. Then he handed her something. A torn page from a logbook with the words Q Route 9 p.m. and the initials HL. When Marlene asked what it meant, Darren looked away and said, "Don't ask that out loud." For years, Marlene pushed for access to internal reports. She wrote letters, filed requests, even contacted journalists. Most doors stayed shut, but in 1992, a retired dispatcher named Gloria agreed to meet her. Gloria had kept a copy of the original radio transcripts from Emily's last shift just in case. One detail stood out. Emily's voice wasn't frantic in her last call. It was steady. Quarry Road. Possible 1066 solo approach. A 1066 meant a suspicious person or vehicle. But what Gloria revealed next chilled Marlene. That part of the tape, the Quarry Road call, had been erased in the department archives intentionally. Someone had cut the official record. Marlene asked, "Why would someone do that?" Gloria paused and replied, "Because what she saw, someone didn't want anyone else to hear." But the more Marlene dug, the more she realized too many people had stopped asking questions altogether. In late 1994, 10 years after Emily vanished, Marlene received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was quiet male and unmistakably trembling. "You're still looking for her?" Marlene froze. "Yes," she answered. "I can't say much," the voice whispered. "But check the drylands, North Gully, South Ridge Line, below the old service road." Then the line went dead. She contacted police immediately. A unit was sent, but no formal dig or drone scan was done. The report filed it as a false lead. 3 months later, that area was developed for off-road vehicle training. It was bulldozed and reshaped, and the land's original topography lost forever. Marlene could not understand how such a specific tip was brushed off. Unless someone didn't want the area searched, unless someone was watching her movements. And if so, who knew she had received that call? In 1998, 14 years after the disappearance, an amateur hiking group stumbled upon something strange deep inside a rock gulch during a dry season. A rusted roof, a battered antenna, faded red and blue lights coated in dust. It was a police car, badly decayed, sunken into dried mud, and trapped in a narrow pit as if it had been driven or pushed off a slope. The group immediately reported the find. When authorities arrived, the VIN number confirmed it. Emily Rain's patrol car. It had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. Inside the trunk, no body, no weapon, just a rotted-out folder sealed in plastic marked Q route. The ink was smeared, but under special light. Faint handwriting was visible. It wasn't supposed to go this far. That note wasn't in Emily's handwriting, and that's when the case, long buried, exploded back into the spotlight. When the crime lab enhanced the note found in the trunk, they were able to match 2 critical letters scribbled at the bottom, HLL, the same initials Darren Holt had flagged years ago. The department tried to keep that detail quiet, but Marlene still had connections inside. One of them sent her a photo of the folder under blacklight. She stared at the letters for hours. Could it really be Holt? Was he involved? Or had he tried to stop something and failed? Marlene tracked him down. He was living in Nevada under a different name. She flew out to confront him, not out of anger, but desperation. He agreed to meet. He looked older, quieter, more guarded, and when she asked him about the initials, he simply said, "I told you I tried to help, but some things they're bigger than you think." Then he walked away again. In the official case file, one odd detail always stood out. Emily had a habit of recording her shifts on a personal camcorder. Not department issue, just her own tool for staying safe. She kept it mounted in her patrol car angled toward the windshield, but when the cruiser was recovered, it was gone. No mount, no wires, no trace it had ever been installed. A retired forensics officer reviewed the photos and confirmed. The dashboard showed scratch marks where the camcorder bracket used to be. That meant someone had removed it deliberately and cleanly. But who would have gotten to the car first and how? Authorities claimed the area had been searched in 1984, but clearly it had not. Or worse, it had been, just not officially, which begged a darker question. Was someone out there all these years guarding this secret? Months after the cruiser was found, a tip came in from an unlikely source. A retired auto mechanic named Walter Pike. He had worked part-time for the department in the early 80s, maintaining fleet vehicles, and he remembered something odd. A month before Emily vanished, she came in and specifically requested her brake lines checked. "I thought maybe she was just cautious," he said, but then she leaned in close and whispered, "If something happens to me, look at this car first." He never forgot that. After the disappearance, He expected someone to investigate the vehicle records, but no one ever called him. 15 years passed. When he saw the cruiser on the news, he recognized the dented fender. It was the same one he had repaired weeks before. He reached out finally and asked, "Did they ever check the brakes?" The answer, no one had. Just days after the cruiser was recovered, Marlene requested access to Emily's full personnel and case files. At first, she was told to wait. Then came the news. A storage mishap had destroyed several boxes from 1983 and 1984, including Emily's. The reason, a small electrical fire in the archives room. No injuries, no report filed, just a quiet apology and a closed door. But Marlene wasn't buying it. She discovered that only her sister's files, along with a few related traffic stop logs, were missing. Every other record on that floor remained intact. Even the officer who gave her the denial looked uneasy. "It's like someone wants to erase her from history," he muttered under his breath. Marlene leaned closer and asked, "Then why did they leave the cruiser?" The officer looked up. Maybe they wanted it found, just not too soon. In a town hall meeting held after the cruiser discovery, dozens of citizens gathered to discuss reopening the case. Reporters were present. Police officials looked tense. The mood was heavy. Marlene spoke passionately about her sister, urging transparency. The crowd applauded, but at the back of the room, she noticed a man standing in the shadows, silent, arms folded, not taking notes like the rest. Something about him felt familiar. After the meeting, she tried to find him, gone. She asked around. No one else had noticed him, but later she received an envelope in her mailbox. No return address. Inside, a faded photograph of Emily at a gas station. Timestamp just 15 minutes before her last radio call. And in the background, a man leaning against a black sedan wearing the same jacket as the one at the meeting. Was it him? And if so, why now? Determined to find something the police had missed, Marlene requested access to old patrol logs. Not just Emily's, but every shift scheduled around the date. She vanished. She spread out pages across her dining table highlighting names, times, and locations. That's when a strange pattern emerged. 2 officers from another district hours away were listed as riding along in Emily's area that night. An unusual crossover for a routine patrol, but their names were redacted in the version she was given. That alone raised alarm bells. Why hide visiting officers' identities? Were they even real or placeholders for someone else? She filed a public request for unredacted logs and was denied. The reason? Personnel safety. That phrase stayed with her. Why would revealing a 15-year-old name put someone in danger unless those people still had something to lose? A former local reporter contacted Marlene after seeing a news segment on the recovered patrol car. He handed her something odd, a receipt Emily had signed at a gas station, timestamped 7:42 p.m. on the night she disappeared. But here's the twist. Her last radio dispatch had come at 7:35 p.m. 7 minutes earlier, allegedly from a different location miles away. Was it a misprint or had someone doctored the logs? If the gas station time was correct, it would mean Emily was alive and on foot after she'd supposedly vanished. Marlene visited the gas station. It had changed hands 3 times. But one employee remembered the old owner talking about a nervous-looking cop who came in that night and didn't pump gas, just stood near the payphone. There were no surveillance tapes left. But what did she call, and who was on the other end? Digging deeper into phone records from that night, Marlene worked with a private investigator to trace any unusual calls made from the payphone near the gas station. It took weeks, but they found something. A 92 call made to an unlisted number, one connected to the regional DEA office. Emily wasn't on assignment with DEA, so why would she contact them? Even stranger, there was no record of any DEA inquiry or crossover in the area that month. Marlene contacted a former DEA agent who'd worked in that district. After some pressure, he revealed a nickname, Operation Bridgeway. He wouldn't say more, just warned. Emily got too close to something that still isn't meant to be talked about. Marlene pressed him again, and he simply said she wasn't taken for what she did. She was taken for what she found. But what had she found? A sketch surfaced from the original police file, one that had never made it into the public version. It was drawn by Emily's own hand, dated 2 weeks before her disappearance. It showed a narrow bridge over a ravine with 3 figures and a parked vehicle nearby. One of the figures had a badge. The other 2 didn't. Marlene stared at the sketch, confused. Then she remembered a rural bridge about an hour from their home, a place Emily used to drive to when she needed to clear her head. She drove out there with the sketch in hand, and beneath the overgrowth on one of the support beams, she found it. A set of initials carved into the concrete. "EJ, I saw you." Faded but unmistakable. Someone had left a warning or a promise. But was Emily the one who carved it? While sorting through one final stack of records, Marlene stumbled upon something overlooked. A tattered file mislabeled under an unrelated traffic stop case. Inside was a small, grainy photo of Emily, not in uniform, taken from a distance. She was meeting someone in a diner parking lot, head turned as if sensing she was being watched. The note attached was scribbled with initials CB and the words, "She knows too much." Watching her closely, there was no explanation, no follow-up, no context. But this file had a fingerprint tag. Marlene paid to have it analyzed. The print matched a former federal agent who had died in 1999. His death officially ruled a suicide, but Marlene uncovered whispers of internal conflicts, secrets, and quiet payoffs. She looked at the photo one more time. If Emily had been under surveillance by feds, not locals, then her disappearance wasn't random. It was intentional. Marlene tracked down a former city councilman who served during the 1980s. He had nothing to gain now. Retired, widowed, and blunt. When she mentioned Operation Bridgeway, he went still. "That wasn't local," he said. "That came from above, and you know, and I mean way above. We were told to stay out of it. Just keep things quiet." According to him, Bridgeway involved drugs, movement of cash, and compromised officials. Emily unknowingly may have stumbled into something meant to stay buried. But what was she doing at that bridge 2 weeks before she disappeared? The councilman leaned in and said, "I only heard one thing. She had photos." Photos of what? And where were they now? He didn't know, but he left her with one final sentence. "If you're stirring this up again, be careful. They're not done watching." Back at home, Marlene dug into the last untouched spot, the garage attic. In one rusted toolbox, buried beneath layers of old uniforms and empty shell casings, she found a locked metal box. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were 3 undeveloped rolls of 35mm film, a handwritten note in Emily's precise penmanship, and a photo envelope marked, "Keep safe." The note read, "If anything happens to me, don't trust the badge. Only show these when it's safe." The film was too old for standard development. Marlene reached out to a film preservationist who agreed to help, but it would take 2 weeks. What was on those rolls? The envelope held only one photo, a blurred image of what looked like a transaction. 2 men passing a thick envelope beside a squad car, but the squad number, it belonged to a retired captain still alive. The man in the photo, Captain Ray Donnelly, had retired in 1990 with full honors, but his record had strange gaps, several years without field work, sudden promotions, and sealed commissions. Marlene visited his nursing home. He was frail but lucid, and when she laid the photo on his blanket, his hands trembled. He stared at it for a long time before saying, "That night we were told to let it happen." "Let what happen?" she asked. She wasn't supposed to be there. Ree refused to name names, only whispering. She found the warehouse. She wasn't the first, but she was the last. Marlene pressed for details, but he just muttered. That's why the car ended up where it did, far enough down. They hoped no one would ever find it. But someone had found it. Was it too late to follow the trail? 2 weeks later, the film rolls were ready. Marlene opened the digital scans with trembling hands. Frame after frame showed images taken at night. Emily's handwriting noted dates, times, and locations. One series showed a dockyard near the bridge where unmarked vans loaded crates onto boats. Another showed men, some in uniforms, passing duffel bags at a storage unit clearly numbered 114. And the last roll, it was a sequence. Emily had captured someone following her car. Same black sedan, same plates, multiple nights. One photo taken through her rearview mirror showed the driver clearly a man still active in law enforcement today. Marlene gasped. She had proof. But would it be enough? Because what she did next, that would decide everything. Marlene arranged a meeting with a reporter from a national paper, someone willing to take risks. They agreed to meet at a cafe near the courthouse, but the reporter never showed. Instead, a man in a plain gray suit entered, sat across from her, and calmly said, "You need to stop. This story doesn't end the way you think." He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside was a single document, a sealed file from 1985 stamped with her sister's badge number. The bottom read, "Case resolved internally." No explanation, no signature, just a silent closure. She looked up, heart pounding, but the man was already walking out the door. She raced after him, but he was gone. The number 114 stuck in Marlene's mind. It matched the unit shown in Emily's photos. She checked public records. That storage facility still existed. With cautious hope, she drove across town and found it. A rusting, forgotten complex tucked behind an old industrial yard. Unit 114 was still registered, but not to her sister, to a shell company dissolved in 1991. Marlene slipped through a loose panel on the gate and approached the door. The lock was old but brittle. One crowbar and a racing heart later, she forced it open. Inside was a single crate wrapped in heavy plastic. Dust rose in clouds. It hadn't been touched in years. She pried it open, and inside, under moldy tarps and rotted documents, she found something that froze her breath. A bundle of cassette tapes labeled Emily Notes and a sealed brown envelope marked confidential. Marlene brought the tapes home and found an old recorder. She hesitated before pressing play. Emily's voice crackled through the speaker, tired, urgent, but unmistakably hers. "If you're hearing this, I guess I never made it back. I was right. They're hiding something under the bridge. I saw crates, guns, drugs, and someone I knew was involved." She listed badge numbers, times, dates, all in a calm, methodical tone. It wasn't paranoia. It was evidence. But around the third tape, the tone changed. "They know I've been watching. I saw the same car again last night. Same license plate. They know where I live." Then silence. The last minute of the final tape was blank, except for a quiet knock and Emily whispering, "They're here." Marlene dropped the recorder. That was the night she vanished. But who exactly were they? The brown envelope had no return address. Only 2 words written in black ink. "Read carefully." Inside were faded black and white photos, blurry images of night scenes, docked boats, badge flashes, and one unmistakable face, the man from the black sedan. A typed note was paperclipped to the photos. It read, "If this ever gets out, careers will end. Maybe lives." She knew too much, but it wasn't her fault. She was brave. It wasn't signed. Marlene scanned every image. One showed a shoreline with an angle she recognized. It was taken from the spot where Emily's car was found 15 years later. Who took that photo? And why had they kept this hidden for so long? She realized the implications. Someone knew where Emily's car had been all along, and they had watched to make sure no one ever got too close. Marlene revisited the site where the patrol car was found. A rocky area near the riverbank with a steep incline and loose boulders. But something bothered her. The landscape had shifted. She remembered the investigators saying they had only recovered part of the vehicle, not the entire chassis. With a new flashlight and steel nerves, she followed the cliff's edge and discovered a narrow opening half covered by brush. Behind it, a shallow cave, dry, hidden, and almost completely walled off. Inside, she found tire marks, scraps of faded plastic, and what looked like insulation from a car's interior. Someone had tried to move the car, or part of it, deeper into the rocks, but they failed. Why? And more importantly, what had been in the part that was never recovered? Whatever it was, someone still wanted it buried. Back at her sister's old apartment, now long leased out, Marlene contacted the landlord, who kindly allowed her to search the basement storage assigned to Emily. There, tucked behind a water heater, was an old wooden box marked with a heart, and the initials E inside were childhood trinkets. But beneath them, a final hidden compartment. It held one more cassette. This one wasn't labeled. She played it. "I've copied everything and hidden the rest. I'm scared, but I can't walk away. If anything happens, look for the badge with the scratch." A badge? Marlene didn't understand until she realized she had seen one like that in one of the photos. The scratch badge number was 7431. She looked it up, and what she found made her blood run cold. The officer wearing it was still active duty, and now he knew Marlene was getting too close. Badge number 7431 belonged to Officer Kenneth Doyle, a name that had never come up in any of the previous investigations. Marlene found that odd considering Doyle had been part of the initial search team when Emily first disappeared. Even more suspicious, Doyle was one of the few officers still working in the same district, and he had been promoted twice. Marlene pulled up his personnel records. A few years after Emily's case went cold, Doyle had requested reassignment away from missing persons and into narcotics. Then, a quiet career. No blemishes, no awards, just steady. Too steady. She compared Doyle's patrol logs from 1984 with the times listed in Emily's tapes. There was overlap, more than coincidence. But then she made a chilling discovery. One of the photos in the brown envelope wasn't a surveillance shot. It was a posed photo, and Kenneth Doyle was smiling in it. Marlene contacted a retired officer who had worked the department back in the 80s. Carefully, she asked about Doyle. The retired cop hesitated, then said he was quiet, kept to himself. But he and Emily didn't exactly get along. She accused him of cutting corners on an arrest report once. It got ugly. Emily had filed a complaint that had never been mentioned. Marlene dug into old internal affairs reports and finally found it buried in a file marked non-actionable. Emily had accused Doyle of falsifying evidence in a drug arrest. A week later, she vanished. Coincidence? In the same report, there was another name, a detective who had signed off on closing the internal complaint. That detective? He retired in 1998, the same year Emily's car was found. Why were so many loose ends being snipped just before that discovery? And why did it feel like someone had planned the timing? Back in the late 80s, a homeless man named Delroy had told police he'd seen a woman matching Emily's description, arguing with a man near the cliffs where her car was eventually found. He'd even described the man's car, a black sedan with government plates. The case file noted his statement and then dismissed it due to lack of credibility. Marlene tracked Delroy down. He was still living in the same part of town, now in a halfway shelter. When she brought up Emily, he remembered her instantly. I told him she was scared, said she was trying to run. The guy grabbed her, pushed her down, but they laughed at me. Marlene showed him a photo of Kenneth Doyle. Delroy's eyes went wide. That's him, he whispered. But he had more to say. He'd seen Doyle again weeks later, throwing something into the river. Marlene returned to the riverbank, this time with a private dive team she hired with the last of her savings. Using sonar equipment, they began scanning the water near where Delroy claimed Doyle had dumped something. What they found shocked them. About 12 foot down, lodged in the muddy riverbed, was a long metal object wrapped in chains. Divers surfaced with it. It was a duffel bag sealed tight, waterlogged, and reeking. Inside were several items: a rusted handgun, a badge with a scratch across the number, and a water-damaged notebook with only a few legible words. One line stood out: "If I disappear, this man is why." The signature, E.S. Emily. The notebook had survived 15 years underwater, just barely. But it raised an urgent new question. Why would Doyle throw away a badge that wasn't his? Or was it his? After all, with everything she had, the tapes, the notebook, the badge, the photos, Marlene approached a journalist who had once covered corruption inside the force. He listened in silence. When she was done, he said, "That's more than a story. That's a bombshell." They agreed to meet with an attorney and present it all to the state investigator's office. But when the file was finally submitted, they were told something shocking. Kenneth Doyle had quietly retired 2 months earlier. He'd moved out of state. No forwarding address, no official retirement statement, just vanished. No one in the department had spoken to him since. The state declined to open an investigation due to insufficient criminal evidence. Marlene was stunned. Even with everything in hand, no one wanted to touch it. But the biggest mystery remained. If Doyle had left, what or who was he still afraid of? In a follow-up interview with the retired officer, Marlene asked one last question. Did Emily ever mention a place she went to clear her head? He nodded slowly. Yeah, a cabin. Her uncle's, I think, near Mirror Ridge. Marlene's heart raced. Mirror Ridge was only 20 minutes from where Emily's car had been found. No mention of this cabin existed in the official reports. Had anyone ever searched it? She contacted the land registrar. The property had been sold in 1989, 5 years after Emily's disappearance, by someone claiming to be her next of kin. The name was unfamiliar and worse. The signature was forged. Marlene drove there. The cabin still stood overgrown but intact. Inside it was empty until she opened a trap door beneath a rug. The air changed. The flashlight beam caught something. Was this where it ended or where it all began? Marlene descended slowly into the darkness. Dust swirled in the flashlight beam, and the creaking wood beneath her echoed like distant footsteps. Below the cabin was a narrow crawl space, damp, cold, and lined with stone. It had not been touched in years. Then her light caught it. Writing on the wall, scratched into the stone in crude, jagged letters were 3 words. "I'm still here." Marlene froze. There was no body, no bones, just a frayed piece of cloth, the color and pattern matching the uniform Emily wore in the 1980s. Marlene backed out and called in the discovery anonymously. She could not risk the evidence being buried again. Forensics teams arrived days later. The writing matched Emily's known handwriting samples, but there was no conclusive evidence she had died there. So, the bigger question haunted everyone who heard the report. Had Emily been kept alive for a time? The official story was unraveling. Emily's car was found in 1999. The badge in the river had been submerged since at least 1990. And now, handwriting believed to be from 1985 inside a cabin forgotten by everyone. Marlene laid out the timeline on her wall and realized something chilling. There was a 5-year gap where no one had even been looking for Emily, and in that time, several other women had also vanished from nearby counties. All were dismissed as runaways or domestic disappearances. The pattern wasn't exact, but it was enough to raise alarm. She compared old case files and found a common thread. In every case, one of the initial investigators was Kenneth Doyle. Why wasn't anyone connecting this? Then she received a voicemail, a man's voice. "Altered. You're looking where you shouldn't. Some doors aren't meant to open." The call came from a burner phone in her own city. Marlene took the voicemail to a journalist contact in cybersecurity. The voice was digitally scrambled, but the signal had pinged near the old police headquarters. Doyle hadn't left the state. He'd gone underground. She passed all her findings to a senator's aide who promised an internal review. Weeks passed. Then the story disappeared. Literally, her article draft was rejected. The reporter who had helped her took sudden leave. Her email accounts were breached. Even the forensic report from the cabin vanished from public databases. It was as if the truth was being peeled back one page at a time. And then quietly the cabin burned. Arson. No suspects. No arrests. The police called it a vandal's accident. But Marlene knew better. Somewhere someone had decided Emily's story should end not with answers, but with silence. But silence leaves echoes. 15 years after she disappeared, and still no closure. But every year since the car was found, someone left fresh leaves at the cliff's edge. No note, no photo, just the flowers. In 2005, a memorial plaque was quietly added to a park near the precinct. It read, "Sergeant Emily Sloan, 1952 to unknown. You never walked alone." Who authorized it? No one knew. The department denied placing it. The city said it wasn't registered. Marlene visited it often, placing her own candle beside the stone. One day, she found a note tucked behind the plaque. "Truth buried is still truth, but it waits." It wasn't signed, but the paper matched the kind used in the old department memo pads. She looked up at the sky and whispered the question everyone was still asking. Was Emily ever going to come home? And if not, who was keeping her away? 2 years after the plaque appeared, Marlene received a package, no return address. Inside was a manila folder, yellowed, brittle, but intact. It contained photocopies of what looked like old case notes, some redacted with thick black marker, others barely legible. At the top corner of every page, one name was stamped faintly. Sergeant Emily Sloan, official. One entry caught Marlene's breath. Interview notes with Sloan, July 1986. Protective custody transfer pending. Protective custody. That date was 2 years after Emily had vanished. Had she been alive and hidden? The note referenced a U.S. Marshals Division, but when Marlene called, no records existed. They had never handled anyone by that name. She read the final note aloud to herself. Subject shows signs of trauma. Threat level high. Recommend relocation. But then, why did no one ever see her again? And who was she being protected from? Years have passed. The cliff where Emily's patrol car was found is now overgrown again. Nature reclaiming what it once revealed. Locals still leave flowers. Children ride past on bikes, unaware of the shadow the place holds. And the question still lingers. Was Emily killed by someone she trusted? Someone in uniform? Or was she taken into silence by an institution meant to protect her? No one has answered. The case remains officially open, but unofficially forgotten. Marlene moved on, but every so often her phone buzzes with an untraceable call. No voice, just static. like someone checking to see if she's still looking. She always is. Because some disappearances do not just haunt families. They echo through entire communities. And Emily's story is not just a mystery. It's a reminder that some truths hide not in the dark, but in plain sight, buried by time, fear, or design. The vanishing of Sergeant Emily Rains remains one of the most chilling missing person cases that continues to haunt investigators and families alike. Her story represents the countless disappeared, without a trace mysteries that plague our true crime landscape. This unsolved disappearance demonstrates how missing persons investigations can span decades, leaving cold case files filled with more questions than answers. Stories like Emily's remind us that real-life mysteries often surpass any suspense thriller. When someone vanished without explanation, entire communities search for closure. The mysterious circumstances surrounding missing police officers create particularly haunting disappearance stories that echo through time. These unsolved missing person cases highlight how vanished people can leave behind evidence that surfaces years later, yet still provide no definitive answers. True crime enthusiasts know that the most compelling suspense stories often involve those who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Cold case mysteries like this one show us that sometimes the most shocking real stories emerge from small towns where everyone thought they knew each other. These vanishing persons documentaries and missing family investigations reveal the complex web of secrets that can surround a single disappearance. What makes this case particularly disturbing is how a missing female officer's investigation was allegedly compromised from within. The horrifying discoveries made years later, from the patrol car to the riverside evidence, paint a picture of systematic cover-ups. These are the types of unresolved mysteries that remind us how missing persons cold cases can involve corruption at the highest levels. The tragic disappearance of Emily Rains serves as a stark reminder that behind every missing person story lies a family still searching for answers, still hoping their loved one will be found after disappearance.